Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Planeta Baseball Deep Dive. We're here to break down some of the buzz around Major League Baseball.
Hello, baseball fans. And just a reminder, you can always check out the Planeta Baseball blog for even more analysis to go along with what we discuss here.
Absolutely, and a huge shout out to Frank Pereiro, that's at Frank Pereiro on Twitter, from Planeta Baseball for putting together all the great material we'll be digging into today. Seriously, thanks Frank.
So today we're focusing on something pretty interesting. Some early concerns cropping up around the Los Angeles Dodgers, despite those sky-high expectations, and at the same time, some surprising developments over in the American League.
Exactly. We've got some good sources lined up, and our mission today is basically to pull out the key insights about where the Dodgers stand right now and what's behind these intriguing shifts in the AL. We want to give you a clear and hopefully entertaining picture of what's happening.
All right, let's kick things off with the Dodgers. I mean, going into the season, the projections were just massive, right? Some had them pegged for, 115 wins?
Yeah, a staggering number. But the reality, as we hit this weekend of April 19th, 2025, looks a little different, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They weren't actually leading the NL West.
That's right. You had the Padres, whose offense has really come alive. The Giants showing a positive run differential, always a good sign. And, the Diamondbacks, who would actually be leading some other divisions.
And that little shakeup in the standings is also reflected in the odds, right?
Yeah.
The probabilities Fangraphs gave them for winning the division and even the World Series have dipped slightly.
Correct. Their chances to take the NL West dropped from a really strong 83.8% in the preseason down to 74.6%. Still the favorites, obviously, but a drop. And for the World Series, it went from 23.2% down to 21.2%. It's not like a collapse, but it's a little flag. Makes you wonder what's going on.
Okay, so let's break that down. What do you think is the main factor behind these early warning signs around the Dodgers? Well, the first thing that jumps out is the average age of their roster, particularly the position players. They're actually the oldest team in MLB in that regard, averaging 31.3 years old. The league average is, 28.3? That's a pretty big gap.
Right, and experience is great, but veteran status can be a double-edged sword in baseball, Higher injury risk, maybe performance starts to fluctuate a bit more. Are we seeing signs of that with specific players?
Definitely seeing some potential flags. You've got Freddie Freeman, who's 35 now, still dealing with that nagging ankle issue. Then there's Max Muncy at 34, and his strikeout rate has climbed over 35%. That's always a bit worrying for consistency.
And Mookie Betts, can't forget him. He's 32, still an elite talent, obviously, but he's entering that age range where historically you sometimes start to see a little physical decline. Hopefully not for an athlete like him, but it's, a factor.
Exactly. Plus, if you look at how their roster is built, there's a heavy reliance on talent brought in via free agency or trades. It works for building contenders fast, but long-term. Only Will Smith and maybe Andy Pages are really homegrown hitting talents making a big impact right now. Makes you wonder about sustainability if the farm doesn't keep producing stars.
That's an interesting point about team construction. And on top of that, you mentioned their recent injury history isn't exactly stellar either.
No, not at all. The last two seasons, the Dodgers actually led the league in days lost to injury. And already here in 2025, a key arm like Blake Snell is on the IL. So you combine a potentially fragile rotation with these veteran position players, their path to a title might be, let's say, a bit bumpier than expected.
Got it. So a picture of some underlying vulnerability in LA. Okay, let's pivot across the country now and look at the American League. Sounds like there's some cool adjustments happening and players finding new ways to succeed. Let's talk about Spencer Torkelson with the Tigers.
Yeah, Torkelson's case is really fascinating. It's a great example of how this new Statcast data stuff like batter box depth and stance width is giving players and coaches real insight. We can actually see the adjustments now.
And what was the specific change Torkelson made? Because his numbers to start the year have been, pretty eye-popping.
Well, look at this. He moved almost 6 inches further back in the batter's box, and he opened up his stance significantly to a negative 15.7 degrees, which is way more open than average. And the results, hitting .288, OBP of .386, slugging .630, with 6 homers already.
Wow, that's quite a shift. And I guess that adjustment ties directly into his improved ability to pull the ball and hit it harder.
Seems like it. His pull rate is up at 59%, meaning he's catching the ball up front more often on his pull side. And that average exit velocity of 92.9 mile per hour shows he's making consistently solid contact. It's like moving back and opening up just unlocked something for him. Found the key.
And Torkelson isn't the only guy in the AL playing around with where he stands in the box, is he?
No, definitely not. You see other interesting examples. George Springer for the Blue Jays, he's also moved back a couple of inches and opened up a bit. Then you go the other way. Giancarlo Stanton with the Yankees has one of the most closed stances now, and Rafael Devers in Boston. Super open stance. It shows hitters are really using this data to fine-tune their mechanics.
Speaking of the Blue Jays, actually, a lot of people thought they had a brutal April schedule, but they seem to be navigating it pretty well, right?
Yeah, they are. That schedule looked tough on paper, but they've held their own. And, you also have to look at the context of the AL East. It maybe doesn't look quite as ferocious as it did preseason because of some key subtractions elsewhere.
What do you mean specifically? What's changed the landscape there?
Well, big names leaving the division helps, like Juan Soto and Corbin Burns heading to the NL.
Yeah.
That obviously weakens their old teams. Then you add the really tough news for the Yankees, with Jarrett Cole potentially out for the whole season, plus the uncertainty around Giancarlo Stanton's return. And Tampa Bay's dealing with injuries too. Shane McClanahan, Josh Lowe. Those are significant hits. It kind of opens the door a bit for a team like Toronto.
Yeah, those are some major blows that definitely shift the balance of power. And even though Toronto's big bats haven't fully exploded yet, they've had some really encouraging pitching, particularly from one starter.
That's right. Chris Bassett has looked really sharp in his early starts. He's piled up 31 strikeouts with only 5 walks in 23 innings. And the talk is he's using his splitter more and elevating his cutter effectively against lefties. Seems like he's found a new mix that's working really well.
So with these division dynamics shifting and Bassett pitching well, the projections for the Blue Jays must be looking better now.
According to Pecota, yeah. They're now projecting a 35.6% chance of winning the division and a 70% chance of making the playoffs overall. Those are pretty solid numbers, especially considering how tough that division was expected to be.
Okay, so zooming out on everything we've discussed, it really paints a picture of how quickly things can change in MLB, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You've got the Dodgers, who still look like this dominant force, the Death Star, as some call them, but maybe showing a few cracks, a little vulnerability that could open things up in the NL West.
And then over in the AL, you're seeing how smart adjustments, maybe driven by new data and just smart planning by teams, can lead to surprising results and challenge those preseason narratives.
Exactly. Which leads us to maybe a final thought for our listeners. How much do you think these factors, be veteran players aging, unexpected injuries, these subtle technical adjustments, how much will they continue to reshape the baseball landscape as the season unfolds? It's definitely something worth keeping a close eye on.
That's a great point to end on. And with that, we'll wrap up this deep dive from Planeta Baseball. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone.
Yep, thanks for listening. And don't forget to check out the blog for more baseball insights. We'll catch you next time.
Until then, keep enjoying the games.